all about engine removal and reinstallation, or more commonly called an engine swap. We're going to discuss that within the next couple of weeks here, so be sure to stay tuned and watch out for further videos right around the Christmas break. We're going to try and get a fresh engine put back into this Dodge Dakota here. Now, this is a non-transverse 6-cylinder engine. Now, I mean, front-wheel drive, it's basically the same kind of scenario, but what we're going to deal with here is a two-wheel drive truck. It's basically the same thing as your two-wheel drive, rear-wheel drive car, but, you know, we're going to try and shed some light on this so you guys aren't going to be running in the blind. Now, engine was bad in this, so, quite naturally, I removed it. So, we're going to go and take a look at our specimen truck, which I like to call Aunt Betty. She's sitting over there quietly in the snow, stargazing at the front end of the property. You know how that is. The dog is kind of just sitting there, as I like to call him, my junkyard dog. Oh no, he thinks I have food. Somebody stop him. No, go find some wheel discs and hubcaps and old wheel bearings somewhere. I don't have anything. So what you're going to want to do when you find yourself a vehicle, you're going to want to make sure that the engine runs the way you want it to. Nothing sucks worse than having to remove an engine or more specifically, getting a vehicle where the original owner says, "Oh, it ran when I parked it." You don't want to buy something like that. You want to make sure that this thing runs before you take it out. So what we have here is our specimen vehicle. Now there's nothing fancy about it, it's just your typical truck. So what we're going to do is we're going to start this unit up. We're going to take a good thorough walk around of this and make sure that it's not leaking. Now if you're replacing the transmission as well, you're going to want to make sure that the transmission works the way that you want it to. You're going to want to make sure all that stuff works perfectly before you even grab a wrench and start dismantling it. You don't want any part of it if it's not running the way you want it to. So, first thing I usually do, disregard all the flaws. You're going to want to see how many miles is on it. Now, if you're buying something private sale, you're going to want to make sure how many miles is actually on the vehicle. If it's more than what your current vehicle has, that you're doing the engine swap to, chances are you're not going to want to even look at it. You're going to want to move on. You're going to want to try and find something that's maybe 200,000 kilometers or 140,000 miles. But I wouldn't go any more than that because you're going to be looking into, well, a possibility of a valve job or a complete engine overhaul. You don't want any part of that. Usually, if you can go to an auto wreckers and find yourself a scrap vehicle that's been maybe in a minor fender bender, but the insurance company wrote it off, chances are the vehicle might only have 50,000 miles, but the engine and transmission are still good. So, anyway, moving on, you're going to want to make sure that everything works, except all that. We don't care about that. Okay, engine starts good, exhaust is a little loud. That could be a very simple fix. It could be a crossover pipe, or it could be the manifold. If you find a cracked exhaust manifold, you're going to want to keep the old one off your blown engine. You're going to want to definitely keep some parts here. Next, pop the hood. Check to see that it is in fact not leaking any fluids of any kind. Looks pretty straightforward. Exhaust manifold looks a little crusty. Take a look under the vehicle. Doesn't see any fluids leaking. All in all, this looks pretty straightforward. You're dealing with a newer vehicle with computers and emissions and all that nonsense. You're going to want to make sure that there's no idiot lights on the dash. Clearly, the only one here that is on is the anti-lock light. We don't really care about that. So the vehicle has 259,000. Now I already knew that when I got it here. Now, that doesn't bother me as much because these engines were pretty good for lasting. Okay, so next I'm going to rev the engine up a little bit. I want to listen for any valve knock or anything of that nature. Alright, sounds pretty good. Sounds like the water pump bearings are starting to go. I can hear a faint hum somewhere along the lines here, but it's definitely coming from something around here. Anyway, next thing you're going to want to look at, exhaust smoke. Now, this thing's kind of difficult to try and comprehend if it is doing anything awful, because the exhaust pipe is tucked in way behind there. So I usually just rev it up, and if you notice odd smoke, either burning oil or burning too rich or any of that nature, or white smoke altogether, then chances are you're going to not want to skip this one. You're going to want to walk away from it as far as possible. Well, that's fairly straightforward. Doesn't seem to be anything wrong with that. Alright. Okay, so this engine's pretty good. It's actually worthy of removing it and putting it into our current vehicle. And any other odds and ends that you can think of. If this vehicle has a oil pressure gauge, which it does, you're going to want to make sure that it is in fact up, and that it isn't low, or that could resemble maybe a faulty oil pump, or maybe the gauge just doesn't work to get all together. But you're going to want to check into stuff like that as well. You're going to want to check restarts. You're going to want to let the engine run for a while. Maybe let it run for a half hour. 3/4 of a tank of fuel in it, so I mean, let it run. Then shut it off and try a warm restart. This way you know what it needs during the process. Because, very simply speaking, it is much easier to do a tune-up to the engine while it's out of the vehicle. Let's say spark plugs, distributor cap and all that stuff. It's a lot easier to change all that when everything is out of the vehicle. So, with that being said, you might as well do it then. But if it doesn't need it, then there's no point bothering with it. Other than that, the engine does start very easily when it's warm and while it's cold. So, we know that we don't really need to do anything there, unless you want to. You can always give it a tune-up. Which I probably will in this case. God knows when this thing had a tune-up anyway. So, this engine is in fact perfectly good and healthy for what we want. So, we're going to go ahead and start stripping this engine out. Within the next couple of weeks, around the Christmas break, I'm going to be posting a bunch of videos about how to remove an engine, so that you guys know for future reference, if you guys ever need to do this down the road, you guys can simply, use it as a reference, the videos that will be coming up within the next couple of weeks. So anyway, that be that. Hopefully you guys stay tuned for it. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you soon enough. And always, always, always remember to practice safety when you're working near an engine. Make sure you have steel toe boots on when you're screwing around with something like this. You don't want to get hurt. And so forth and onward. So we will see you in the next couple of weeks. Don't party too hard. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you later. Didn't find any brake drums yet, eh, dog? Rebel. Now he's ignoring me.